What happens when the very thing you use every day keeps reminding you that you do not yet have what you really want? A woman in Pittsburgh wanted a new Baldwin organ, but the instrument already sitting in her home was an inexpensive one. Each time she sat down to play, the evidence before her could have confirmed the same old fact. This is not the organ I want. But a friend of mine gave her a very different instruction. She was not told to ignore the organ she already owned, nor to wait until she could afford the Baldwin before feeling differently. She was shown how to use the very act she was already performing as the doorway into another experience. So come with me, because in a few minutes you will see how the same principle can be applied when something you see or use every day seems to remind you that your desire is still missing. The instruction she was given was simpler than she might have expected. My friend told her to do something remarkably simple the next time she sat down to play. She was to use the organ exactly as she normally did. Her hands would rest on the same keys. She would hear the same music. Nothing in the room needed to change. But while she played, she was to see in imagination the name Baldwin across the front of the instrument and experience herself playing the finest Baldwin model already hers and fully paid for. Notice how little she was asked to invent. She did not imagine shopping for the organ. She did not imagine the money arriving. She did not imagine how the old instrument would be replaced. The experience she needed was already partly taking place. Playing the organ itself became the imaginal act. The same keys beneath her fingers and the same music in her ears were no longer allowed to mean, I do not have it. In imagination, they belonged to the Baldwin she desired. And from there, events began to move in a direction she had not arranged. And that is exactly what happened. Her father had passed away, and money from his estate began to arrive. The first check was for $4,500, but she used that money for necessary repairs to her home. Then another check arrived from the estate, this time for $3,500. With that money in hand, she decided to look seriously at the Baldwin she wanted. The top-of-the-line model was priced at $5,000, but she was told that it would soon be offered for $4,000, and that the dealer would allow $1,000 for the organ she already owned as a trade-in. That reduced the actual cost to $3,000. She signed the contract, paid for the organ, and the Baldwin was installed in her home. Now notice something about the way this unfolded. She had not imagined an inheritance check. She had not imagined the dealer reducing the price. She had not tried to calculate the trade-in value of the old organ. She had simply experienced herself playing the Baldwin as already hers and already paid for. And the very organ that once reminded her that she did not have it eventually became part of the means by which she obtained it. And that is the part worth carrying into your own life, especially when the circumstances before you seem to keep saying that what you want is still missing. The organ in front of her was real. It was inexpensive, and it was not a Baldwin. She did not need to deny that fact. What mattered was that she did not allow that fact to determine the experience she accepted in imagination. Each time she played, her senses gave her one report, while imagination accepted another. She saw Baldwin, experienced the finest model as hers, and regarded it as already paid for. So there is a simple question you can ask yourself when your present circumstances seem to contradict what you want. Am I allowing what I see now to determine what I am willing to experience inwardly? Because the moment you do that, the present fact has become more than something you observe. You have allowed it to set the limit of what you can accept as true. But there was another lesson in this woman's experience. After obtaining the Baldwin, her roof needed replacing. The estimate was $1,700, and by then the money from her father's estate had been spent. Suddenly, she began wondering how she could possibly pay for it. My friend reminded her of what she had just proved. With the organ, she had not allowed the lack of money to determine what she could possess in imagination. Yet, when the next problem appeared, reason immediately returned and began calculating what was possible. That is an easy mistake to make. We proved the principle in one area and then faced the next difficulty as though the previous experience had taught us nothing. Do not make one fulfilled desire a special exception. If present evidence did not have the final word then, do not give it the final word now. The circumstance may change. The principle does not. So when something before you seems to say you still do not have what you want, do not argue with it. Use it. Ask yourself, what part of the fulfilled experience is already present here? The woman in Pittsburgh already had the keys beneath her fingers. She already heard the music. She was already seated at an organ. She did not need to imagine the entire path to a Baldwin. She imagined only what was missing, the name Baldwin, the model she desired, and the conviction that it was already hers and fully paid for. That is the practice. Use what is already present, and in imagination, experience it as it would be if your desire were already fulfilled. Then leave the means alone. And when the next problem appears, do not return to the old habit of asking reason to decide what is possible. Let the senses tell you what is here now. Let imagination tell you what you are willing to accept as true. Do not make one success the exception. Apply the same principle again. Now, let us go into the silence